Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to go my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off the night, man, we have Adam Page, the newly crowned AEW World Heavyweight Champion. He comes out to the ring, grabs a microphone. Page says that the fans deserve it. Page talks about the fans wanting better wrestling. Page then praises the fans. Page talks about All In and walking in, not into a battle, but into a war with Jon Moxley. Page thanks Orange Cassidy, Jay White, Copeland, The Ops, Bryan Danielson, Darby Allin, Will Ospreay, and specifically Swerve. Page talks about all the emotions that he went into, leading into, and walking out of All In. Page then talks about his family and fans and how much they mean to Adam Page. Moving on from that, we go into our first official match of the night. It is Kyle Fletcher taking on Mascara Dorada. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Fletcher and Dorada, with Fletcher keeping the pace of the match. Dorada hits a Hurricane Rana on Fletcher, followed by a Shooting Star Press. Dorada then hits a 450 on Fletcher for a near fall, but Fletcher hits a devastating brain buster on Dorada in the middle of the ring, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Kyle Fletcher. Hats off to Kyle Fletcher for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we pretty much have an all-star tag team matchup. It is Josh Alexander teaming up with Hechicero and the Young Bucks, taking on Jet Speed, Bandito, and Brody King. The match itself, I thought it was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Jet Speed, Bandito, and Brody King keeping the pace of the match. Bailey hits a moonsault to the outside, followed by Bandito hitting a moonsault to the outside. Bandito then hits an avalanche fall-away slam for a near fall off the top rope. Bailey then hits a poison Rana on Josh Alexander in the middle of the ring. Hechicero applies a submission hold. Referee sounds for the bell, and your winners of the match are Alexander, Hechicero, and the Young Bucks. Moving on from that, we have Adam Copeland. Adam Copeland comes out to the ring, grabs a microphone. He thanks the fans. Copeland says that he didn't come back to save Christian Cage. He also calls Christian Cage an asshole. Copeland says that he doesn't blame the patriarchy for doing what they did to Christian Cage because Cage is selfish. Copeland says that he's back for one thing and one thing only, and that is FTR. Copeland talks about the history and the past that he's had with FTR and the fact that they helped him come back to professional wrestling after he was dealing with an injury that he thought that he might not be able to ever wrestle again. Copeland said he wants to not only beat FTR, but he wants to end FTR. After this, Copeland's interrupted by Stokely Hathaway. Hathaway comes out to the ring. He mocks Copeland. Hathaway says that if Copeland interferes in any way in any kind of FTR match, then Copeland will be fired. Copeland says, well, okay, that's fine. I won't be able to, attack FTR, but you didn't say that you were not able to be attacked. So Copeland out of nowhere hits a spear on Stokely Hathaway in the middle of the ring, pretty much sending a message to both Dax Hardwood and Cash Wheeler. Moving on from that, we have a $100,000 Fatal 4-Way matchup. It is Thekla taking on Queen Amanada, Chris Statlander, and Willow Nightingale. I thought it was a decent match. Back and forth matchup with Willow keeping the pace of the match. Thekla hits a spear on Chris Statlander in the middle of the ring. Willow and Stat both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Willow hitting a power bomb. Sky Blue is here, as well as Julia Hart. Julia Hart sprays mist on Queen Amanada. This allowed Thekla to hit the finish. Pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is Thekla. Hats off to Thekla for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have Toni Storm's victory speech. Toni Storm was pretty much standing on a balcony, if you will. She thanks Mercedes Moné. She also talks about All In and what it meant to her. Toni says that Luther was injured during the match at All In. Then out of nowhere, Toni Storm is interrupted by Athena. Athena talks about a possible matchup with her and Toni Storm now that she won the Women's Casino Gauntlet match. Looks like she had signed the contract, but we don't know exactly when the match is going to take place between Athena and Toni Storm. So it looks like Athena will be the next challenger to Toni Storm's AEW Women's Championship. Moving on from that, we have Okada. Okada has a match against pretty much a jobber. This was a glorified squash match. Okada was keeping the pace throughout the entire match, with Okada quickly hitting a Rainmaker on the jobber. Pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is Okada. After the match, Okada has a microphone. He calls out Swerve and calls Swerve a bitch. Swerve is here with Prince Nana. Okada and Swerve get face to face, and Swerve says that he didn't cost the Young Bucks, or that he did cost the Young Bucks their match. And Swerve tells Okada, "What are you going to do about it, bitch?" and Okada just walks off. So it looks like we are going to get a matchup here between Swerve Strickland and Okada. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of AEW Dynamite. It is a 6-man tag team matchup. It is the Death Riders taking on Mark Briscoe, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Adam Page. I thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between both teams with Mark Briscoe, Hobbs, and Page keeping the pace of the match. Marina Shafir attacks Hobbs ringside. Claudio then hits a giant swing. Hobbs then hits a power slam. Marina then attacks Mark Briscoe. Moxley hits a pile driver for a near fall, followed by Page hitting a fall-away slam on Yuta. Page then hits a powerbomb for a near fall, followed by Page hitting a moonsault to the outside. Page ultimately hits a roll-up in the middle of the ring, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Powerhouse Hobbs, Adam Page, and Mark Briscoe. After the match, Death Riders attack Mark Briscoe, Hobbs, and Page, but then we see Darby Allin pretty much standing on the balcony looking on as the attack was happening on Briscoe, Page, and Hobbs. A couple of things I want to talk about, man, when it pertains to AEW Dynamite last night. And it's probably going to be a hot take for a lot of people. I honestly thought last night's Dynamite was probably one of the worst episodes of Dynamite that we've seen in quite some time. This is my issue, bro. And I think for a lot of AEW fans, I think this is where the reality kind of smacked us in the face last night. When you go to All In at, in Texas Ranger Baseball Stadium, I don't know, I forgot the name of the exact stadium, but where the Texas Rangers play, you look at the fact that, we had All In. It's AEW's biggest show of the year, and attendance-wise, it was almost 30,000 people. 30,000 people. And the show was amazing. From top to bottom, the show was great. From the matches, from the fans reception of AEW and what All In was all about, it was great. It was a great night for professional wrestling, specifically for AEW fans. Then we get to Dynamite. Dynamite was live from Chicago in the, I believe, Aragon Ballroom. This is my issue, bro. I'm all for them going to smaller venues and, not going to arenas where they can't sell out. I'm all for it. I think they had roughly about 1,100 to 1,200 people last night in attendance for this show. And I'm not sitting here saying the crowd was bad. But when you go from All In with 30,000 people and one of your biggest shows, if not your biggest show of the year, it's a harsh wake-up call when we go from that to the Dynamite we had last night when there was only 1,200 people in the crowd, bro, and the arena was so small. I'm not sitting here saying I'm against them going to smaller venues. I'm not. But Chicago, from what I understand, is AEW's second home. I mean, you got to understand. I mean, this place, AEW used to sell out Chicago arenas for a while. I mean, hell, they sold out an arena in Chicago. I think it was the Sears Center, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, I'm sorry, the United Center. And based off a rumor. And that was about CM Punk. And they sold out. Now we're going to smaller venues. Now we're literally going into a ballroom where we sold out with, I think they sold out with 1,200 people in attendance. It's a reality check and a smack in the face to realize that, yes, we had All In and how great All In was and what it meant to the wrestling fans and what it meant to AEW. And then we get to Dynamite and it's like, wow, man, it's still a harsh reality realizing that we had 30,000 people in attendance for All In to 1,200 people for a Dynamite episode in a ballroom. You know what I mean? It was a huge cultural shock, man, to be honest with you. And not taking anything away from the ballroom. I mean, the ballroom was cool. I mean, it kind of gave off some resemblance to, I don't know, an old school theater where, maybe medieval times or it's very old. I think that place was probably made around the 1900s, maybe 1920s. It looks very aesthetically old. Not saying it's a bad looking ballroom. It just looks very, very old. With that being said, yeah, I mean, it was definitely a culture shock for sure to go from almost 30,000 fans at All In Arlington to what we got last night in Chicago with 1,200 fans max at I believe it was the Aragon Ballroom. It was definitely a culture shock, to be honest with you. And it just goes to show you that, yes, Adam Page is a newly crowned World Heavyweight Champion. Tony Storm beat Mercedes Moné, but there's still problems within AEW, bro. For those people oh yeah, they're going to go back to their glory days right after All In. I didn't have that expectation. Do I still believe they need to hit the reset button? Yeah, and I was kind of hoping All In would be that. And maybe it still is. I mean, people need to realize that it's just the first show after All In. Things are going to, hopefully maybe start picking up here, soon. But does it worry me? Absolutely. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying I don't put a lot of faith in Tony Khan and the regime over there in AEW to provide really good weekly episodic television for Dynamite and Collision. I just don't, because for the past 2.5 years, close to 3, these past Dynamite episodes and weekly episodic Collision episodes have been dog shit. That's just me being real. I mean, the ratings have been in the goddamn toilet. I mean, ticket sales are abysmal at this point. Even with smaller venues, they're barely even selling out. So, like, clearly, things are still exactly how they were even when they went to All In and even after All In. It was just one of those things where I was like, damn, bro, you know, they had a great show at All In. I thought All In, as far as, I mean, you got to look at the narrative, man. I mean, that weekend of All In was stacked to the brim with wrestling. I mean, you're talking, you know, All In, Saturday Night's Main Event, you know, and Evolution. You know, you got 3 basically pay-per-views in one weekend. You know what I mean? And do I think All In was the better show? Yeah, but I mean, I've got to say Evolution 2 was really close second to that, to be honest. I think Evolution 2 was way better than Saturday Night's Main Event. But the stack was decked, you know, the deck was stacked against them. You know what I mean? Against AEW. They were running up against 2 PLEs that weekend alone against WWE. But like I said, man, I think, you know, for one, I would also say this too. The residencies that they have, obviously there's a resident they have right now in Chicago where they're at right now until the end of July. So we're going to see the same place for the next couple weeks, which I'm not against that. I'm not. I mean, I know they wanted to have residency in the 2300 Arena. I know there was conversations back a while ago about, you know, going back to the Manhattan Center, you know, so I'm not against that. But it's just, it's crazy to think how we went from 30,000 fans at All In Arlington to 1,200 max for a ballroom and Dynamite last night. It's just crazy, man. I mean, like I said, bro, at the end of the day, there's still a lot of things for Dynamite that needs to change. A lot. And there was a lot about this show that I did not like last night that we're going to get into right now. Number one being the fact that I did not appreciate whatsoever that we saw Jon Moxley and the Death Riders last night. Because for 2 reasons. One, it just told you that the Texas Death Match meant absolutely shit, for one. 2, Jon Moxley shouldn't even been in a conversation to come back to Dynamite for at least another 2.5 weeks. To give it time to let this shit marinate. Because fans were tired of seeing the Death Riders and Jon Moxley, man. I'm sorry. They should have said, hey, John, we're going to give you 2 weeks off. Let the shit marinate for a while. Go on vacation with your wife. Have a good time. All expenses paid, whatever Tony Khan has to do to get his ass off television for 2 weeks and let the shit marinate with Adam Page. The fact that we saw Adam Page once again going up basically against Jon Moxley and the Death Riders literally last night in the main event, I thought that was bullshit. I thought it was bullshit. It took away the vibe from the Texas Death Match they had it All In, and the fact that here we are again seeing Adam Page go up against Jon Moxley and the goddamn Death Riders. There should have been no Claudio, no Wheeler Yuta, no Jon Moxley in sight at all last night for Dynamite. No Marina Shafir, nothing. They should have rode off to the goddamn sunset for 2 fucking weeks. I had a huge problem with that last night. I thought that was fucking ridiculous. The fact that we saw the Death Riders against Adam Page once again, after Page going through all that bullshit leading into All In and then finally beating Jon Moxley to get the AEW World title, then we're going to put them back in a match again, but this time it's not going to be one-on-one. It's going to be a 6-man tag team matchup. That's bullshit, lazy, lackadaisical booking. I'm sorry. That's fucking lazy. And shame on Tony Khan for that. We are done with Jon Moxley and the fucking Death Riders, buddy. We are done. We're done. You shoved that shit down in our face for fucking 6 to 7, if not 8 months. Since last October. You know what I mean? Of this Death Rider shit. We're done with that bullshit, man. We're done. You know what I mean? Jon Moxley needs to go, take some time off, and see what he wants to do in his career, to be honest with you. Because I'm going to tell you right now, Jon Moxley's never going to be the same, to be honest with you. He would have to go back to what he once was, with the Wild Thing entrance and everything else, for people to actually be excited for Jon Moxley again. To be honest, the Death Rider shit's done. It is done. It was ultimately killing this company. And Tony Khan was too dumb and naive to realize it. So that was my one issue, one of my issues I had with AEW last night. The other issue that I have is I'm getting sick and tired of these $1,000, $100,000 Fatal 4-Ways or Battle Royals. I mean, we had the $2 million peso Battle Royal not too long ago or some shit. I'm so done with that crap. I hate that whole concept of these matches. It's just shitty, bro. I just don't like it. I'm not a fan of it. I think it's just a shitty way of booking a match. Like, honestly. Get rid of that. I'm done with that. The other issue that I have as well that really did piss me off was Darby Allin. I'm not going to lie. It's great to see Darby Allin back. But why are we not seeing Darby Allin go after Jon Moxley? No, we're seeing Darby standing on a balcony while Paige and everybody's getting their ass whipped by the Death Riders, and he's just sitting there watching on. You know what I mean? Darby needs to go after Jon Moxley for what he... I mean, last time we saw Darby Allin, he was getting thrown down a bunch of fucking stairs on Dynamite by Jon Moxley and the Death Riders. But Darby Allin's sitting there having a cup of coffee on a fucking balcony doing nothing. That's the shit that pisses me off with that. You know, Darby comes back at All In. They play this video of him being on top of, you know, Mount Everest, which is great. It's a huge accomplishment. Absolutely. Not taking anything away from the guy on that. He comes down from the rafters like Sting. He punches a couple Death Riders and he takes off. Then we get to Dynamite. We hear nothing from Darby Allin on the microphone at all. Why he's back? What is he gonna? What's his plan? No, we see him in a balcony staring down Adam Page getting his ass beat by the Death Riders. Darby needs to go after Jon Moxley. He should be going after beating the shit out of both Claudio, Yuta, Jon Moxley. Even though Moxley doesn't have the title anymore, have Darby go after him. Because we already know MJF has his sights set on the Triple B. We already know that due to the fact that he won the Casino Gauntlet match at All In. He's got the contract. He's just patiently waiting to cash that shit in and try to beat Adam Page for the AEW World title. So no matter Page, who's next for Page, you're going to have MJF waiting in the balance. Waiting to cash in and pretty much prey on Adam Page and his weakest part for him to cash in and become the new AEW World Champion. So Page has to watch out for that. We had the same situation with Athena and Toni Storm. But Darby Allin needs to go after Jon Moxley. It doesn't have to be after the world title. Look what they did to him on his way out. They threw him down a flight of goddamn stairs. But then you want to sit up in the balcony. It was like, it had the same resemblance to when Kenny Omega came back from diverticulitis to hand Okada the Continental title after he won the Continental Classic tournament. You know, no rebuttal on what the hell they did by beating the shit out of him and pretty much having him off TV. No, here's the title, Okada, here it is. Darby Allin should have came down there and whooped their asses last night. No, you're sitting up on the balcony doing nothing. Bro, you've been gone for months. You know what I mean? Time to go back to work. You've been sitting on the balcony? Come on, man. Like, you should have had a microphone or said something about, hey, this is why I'm back. I'm going after Jon Moxley and the Death Riders. We got it from Adam Copeland. Here it is, Adam Copeland going after FTR. We don't know what Christian Cage is going to do. Patriarchy is done with Christian Cage. They're moving on with this Nick Wayne and Kip Sabian and Mama Wayne or whatever the hell her name is. They're moving on. They're not having Christian Cage stick around anymore. So he's on an island all by himself. So most likely he's going to align himself up with Copeland. He doesn't have an option right now. You know what I mean? So eventually that's going to happen whenever we do eventually see Christian Cage come back to AEW television. Now, I also found out some small news that, you know, it's not necessarily bad. Will Ospreay will be taking some significant time off. They kind of wrote him off TV at the main event of All In. He's taking some time off. For what it's worth, I think Will Ospreay deserves it. Will Ospreay has been a workhorse for AEW, man. Him, Swerve, those guys have been a workhorse for AEW. I don't even think Ospreay's really even taken some time off since he's been with AEW, really. He's a workhorse, man, and I'm glad that he's taken some time off. He comes back into the fold, and we'll see what happens. You know, Okada and Swerve. I was actually shocked Okada even called out Swerve. I don't know where the hell that came from. You know, obviously, you know, and that was one of the biggest questions I had for the matchup between Omega and Okada at All In. What was going to be next for these guys, whoever wins this matchup? Okada got the win. Now he's going up against Swerve because Okada's pissed at Swerve because Swerve cost the Young Bucks their EVP status because him and Ospreay and Swerve beat the Young Bucks. They're no longer EVPs. Okay, whatever. That's a story you want to go off on. That's fine. But my problem with that as well is Okada hasn't really been doing shit with the Elite or the Young Bucks. He's been more hanging out and chilling with Don Callis and the Don Callis family. So is he with the Elite or is he not with the Elite? Because as of late, we've seen Okada align himself up with Don Callis and vice versa. He hasn't really been messing around with Matt and Nick Jackson or the Elite. So, and as far as I'm concerned right now, there is no Elite. Right now it's the Young Bucks by themselves. Okada is with Don Callis. Jack Perry, we don't know what the hell happened to Jack Perry, whether he's injured or who the hell knows. So there really isn't an Elite right now. So that concept and that story I really didn't get. Because even leading up to that match, Okada was kind of hanging out with Don Callis. Really wasn't messing with the Young Bucks that much. So like that concept, I didn't really get that. I don't know what's going to be next for Kenny Omega either. I mean, Kenny Omega obviously wasn't on Dynamite last night. We don't know when Omega's going to return or what he's going to do. He could reunite with Kota Ibushi and go after the AEW Tag Team Championships against the Hurt Syndicate. That's also something that could be in the possibility of things to happen, because I don't know what's going to be next for Omega. I really don't. I think that was like I said, my biggest takeaway from this matchup between Okada and Omega at All In. What was going to be next for either Okada and Omega after this matchup? Okada, obviously he's going to defend the Unified Championship, if you will, most likely against Swerve Strickland, so we know that's going to happen. We don't know when Omega's going to come back or what he's going to do. I mean, for me, honestly, I would probably have Omega team up with Kota Ibushi, reunite them, have them go after the AEW Tag Team Championships, because right now on paper there's really nothing going on for Kota Ibushi nor Kenny Omega right now. Speaking of Okada, though, I told you guys that the way that they were setting up this Unified Championship, this is the fact that they were going to have Okada walk around with 3 titles: the Unified Championship, the Continental Championship, and the International Championship. I told you guys this a million times before. Tony Khan and AEW like to take snippets, if you will, from different companies from back in the day, whether it be WCW or All Japan Pro Wrestling. This move right here from Okada is definitely 100% an All Japan Pro Wrestling move. Now, if you guys don't know what All Japan Pro Wrestling is, it used to be a Japan promotion, very well-known promotion in Japan. They had some great talent, great matches. I mentioned some of the names like Vader, Stan Hansen, Kawada, Misawa. All these guys had wrestled over in All Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, the other thing that All Japan Pro Wrestling was also known for is the Triple Crown. Now, the Triple Crown Championship is usually, what I understand, was whoever was the champion would walk around with not 1, not 2, but 3 different titles until they made the Triple Crown Championship. But for All Japan back in the day, a lot of those guys who were champions carried 3 titles simultaneously every time they wrestled. So this has a lot of resemblance to what All Japan Pro Wrestling was. So if you guys go back on YouTube or whatever and go back to watch All Japan Pro Wrestling, a lot of the times you would see their world champions walk around with 3 different titles. You know what I mean? So this is exactly, Tony Khan's taking a page out of All Japan Pro Wrestling's book, and to me, I think it's a bad look for abundance of reasons. Number one, having him walk around with 3 titles is ridiculous, knowing the fact that you were going to unify the Continental Championship and the International title. So why are we still walking around with these 2 other titles that you guys wanted to unify to make it into one specific title, which would have been the Unified Championship? No. Last night, Okada came out with the Unified Championship, and Don Callis is wearing the Continental and the International Championship titles on his shoulders when they're walking out to the ring. I think that's a huge L. And not for nothing, a lot of wrestling fans nowadays don't even know nor give a shit about All Japan Pro Wrestling, to be honest. You know what I mean? They really don't know much about it, or if they do, they don't really give a crap about it because it's not as what it once was. I mean, no offense back in the day for All Japan Pro Wrestling, a lot of shit changed back then too when Misawa pretty much packed up and rolled out and made Pro Wrestling Noah. So, I mean, it's a lot of fans don't realize that situation. You know what I mean? Nor do they probably care about that situation because, you know what I mean, they don't really see it on a weekly, consistent basis like they would see Monday Night Raw or WCW Nitro back in the day or whatever. So they weren't really seeing it, unfold in front of their own eyes. You know what I mean? So, like, seeing that and seeing that, the fact that he's walking out with 3 titles, I think it's just absolutely stupid, to be honest. The Swerve storyline, I don't know how the hell that came about. Like I said, Okada really hasn't been messing with the Elite or hanging around the Young Bucks. I mean, he's kind of been hanging around Don Callis. The Young Bucks have kind of been doing their own thing, and we're paying attention to Will Ospreay and Swerve leading up into All In. So, to me, this is kind of, I don't know how this match came together, to be honest with you. So I think that's kind of odd. But, it's going to be very telling to see what happens with Omega. It's great to see Adam Page. And I will say the biggest benefit of last night was the fact that we saw the AEW World Championship on AEW television last night for the first time since October. That was great. And I'm all hopeful for Page to have a good title run. I'm happy that he, has the World Championship. We see it on Dynamite. We'll see it on Collision. And it's great because I think that's something that AEW desperately needed too. They needed to see their World Championship on their television. But like I said, man, some things change, but some things remain the same. And I think from anything, like I mentioned earlier, is that, we go from, like I said, it was definitely a smack of reality, to be honest with you, when we go from almost 30,000 people for All In, and then we get to Dynamite, the first Dynamite after All In, and it's in a ballroom with 1,200 people. Like, it's definitely like, holy shit, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I sat back and was like, wow, we go from AEW's biggest event of the year, which I get why they had 30,000 people. It's All In. I get that. But it's just crazy to see how we go from AEW having All in Arlington with almost 30,000 people, and then we get to Dynamite, and then it's in a ballroom in Chicago with 1,200 people. Not saying the fans weren't great. The audience was awesome. But it was a shock and awe in the fact that we went from 30,000 people at All In to 1,200 people in a ballroom. You know what I mean? Like, the reality was like, holy shit, man. Even though we went from All In and how great it was like, we're still in the trenches right now with AEW. Like, just because Paige is world champion and Toni Storm retained her AEW women's title doesn't mean that everything's all honky-dory over in AEW right now. No, they're still hurting. They're still trying to figure shit out. And it's just crazy, man. It really is crazy. You know what I mean? I think it was just a huge cultural shock for me. I was like, wow. You know what I mean? We go from 30,000 to maybe 1,200 people in a ballroom. It's crazy. I mean, imagine this, and let me put it to you like this, and this was probably going to be like a holy shit moment for a lot of people. All In to me is AEW's WrestleMania. It's their biggest show of the year every year. WrestleMania is the biggest show in WWE every year. It's the Super Bowl of professional wrestling. So let's look at WrestleMania going from, let's say, 30 to 40,000 people or whatever the hell it is, right? Let's go back to Allegiant Stadium. They probably hold 30, 40,000 people, whatever. We go from that to them going to a ballroom that had, you go from 40,000 fans or 30,000 fans to a ballroom that holds maybe 1,200 people. And this is coming after the biggest show of the year. People would lose their mind if that was WWE. And it was like the same thing for me for AEW. It's like, holy shit, man. This is your biggest show of the year, and then we go to a ballroom with maybe 1,200 people max. And a lot of people were like, oh, stop talking about the ballroom and all this other shit. Like, bro, how can you not? If you're a content creator and you're a podcaster for professional wrestling, you can't sit here and not look at the arena that they're at. So for those people that are saying, oh, don't worry about the arena, dude, shut the hell up with that shit, honestly. It does play a factor in it because it's a harsh reality for people to realize that when people are saying, oh, AEW is doing so well. No, they're not. Now, do I like the fact that they're running smaller arenas? Yes. But business-wise, is it always going to be great? Obviously not when you can go to an arena and have more seats and sell more tickets. Right now, they can't go to these bigger venues because they're not selling the tickets. Meaning that they're making this, whatever they're charging for 1,200 tickets is what they're getting. So they can't expand on that because right now they feel like they can't fill these arenas that they first did in the first 3 years of AEW. That's just common sense. That's the reality of it. So right there is obviously things are not the same. So when they're like, oh, don't pay attention to the ballroom. Bro, I mean, we go from 30,000 in Arlington to 1,200 in a ballroom. You know what I mean? So pay-per-view wise, yeah, it's big business for AEW, but the weekly episodic television, Dynamite and Collision, it suffers immensely. Immensely. And don't get me wrong, like I said, I don't mind the smaller venues, 2,300 Arena, Manhattan Center, the ballroom that they're currently in right now in Chicago, I think it's the Aragon Ballroom. They're great looking venues aesthetically, but I'm saying, like, as far as them making more money, how much money are you making when you're only capping yourself at maybe 1,500 to 1,600 tickets max for these arenas, these ballrooms? When you go to the United Center, you're probably selling, 20,000? You know what I mean? 16,000 to 18,000 seats? You're getting 1,200 at a ballroom. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, bro. I mean, financially, yeah, you would think, oh, well, yeah, they're selling out these smaller venues, they're making their money. Right. Absolutely. But they're going to their smaller venues because they can't capitalize on ticket sales on bigger venues where they would actually make more money. That's what I'm saying. So that obviously the audience is capped at like 1,500 to 1,600 a show. Max for a Dynamite or a Collision. You know what I mean? And this is crazy coming off the biggest show of the year. And then we go to the Aragon Ballroom, I believe, in Chicago, where it's 1,200 max. It's just a huge wake-up call, man. As reality smacks you in the face. And I think that was my biggest takeaway from Dynamite last night, bro. It was like, holy shit, we go from 30,000 damn near in Arlington to 1,200 in a ballroom. Coming off their biggest show of the year. You know what I mean? And not saying that All In was bad. All In was great. It was great. A lot of historic moments for AEW that night. But it was just, when you get to Dynamite last night, you're like, man, they're still not out of the woods yet, man. They're still in murky waters. You know what I mean? They're trying to figure shit out. And it's just crazy. You know what I mean? It's absolutely insane. But like I said, man, some things change, some things remain the same. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful and remember,